Oh, morning, Brandon.
Hey man, good morning.
How are you this morning?
I'm good. So, what's on the schedule for today?
Well, so we've received a referral from a community-based OT for Ann and Dan. We're actually going to go and assess their home using the Safer Home Assessment. Have you ever seen this before?
I haven't, no.
Okay, so it'll be a really good taste of like what it actually looks like to go in and assess fully someone's home. So the community OT sent us the referral because you do need to be trained specifically and go to a workshop for this.
Yeah.
They are unfortunately are not trained, so I am luckily. So here we are. Now the referral does say already, since the OT has already assessed them, that they've given us the OPIs, which is a great start. So the referral says that Anne has difficulty cleaning the dishes, Anne has difficulties with bathing, and Anne has difficulties with cooking and using her kitchen. So the OT has also identified some goals for us, saying that Anne wants to be able to clean her dishes independently by June 1st. She wants to be able to cook safely and independently while seated in her wheelchair by the same date, and would like to bathe independently also by June 1st.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. That's a really good list of OPIs and goals there. So, like, what is a Safer Home Assessment?
So the Safer Home Assessment is, Safer Home is actually an acronym, and it stands for Safety Assessment of Function and the Environment for Rehabilitation, Health Outcome Measurement, and Evaluation.
Well, that's an acronym.
That is a mouthful for sure.
Yeah.
So the Safer Home Assessment is used to assess the cognitive status and independent living in a house. But just keep in mind while we're there that it doesn't directly link to ADLs or IADLs.
Okay, so that's why we're doing the assessment. But, like, who is it for?
So it actually says right in the manual here, I'll show you. So it says the Safer Home is most appropriate for individuals who have difficulty safely performing daily activities because of their disability, their environment, or both. So it was designed for the adult and geriatric populations who have either physical, cognitive, or mental health problems. But it also says the application of the Safer Home is not restricted to any particular impairment, diagnosis, or functional problem. It can be used for clients with multiple diagnoses and complex functional and environmental problems.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's really good at...
So, like, does Dan or Anne include any of those categories at all?
Well, it also says on the referral that Anne is living with severe osteoarthritis.
Okay,
So,
is she in a wheelchair then?
yeah, it seems like it from the referral. We'll know more once we get there, but
Okay.
like it said in her goals is that she wants to be able to cook safely and independently while seated in her wheelchair.
Okay, so, like, where do I find this assessment? Can I get it on Google?
No, unfortunately you can't find this one on Google. This one costs about $100 for the manual itself for version 3, and it comes with 20 of these Safer Home Assessment forms.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that outlines everything for you, does it?
It for sure does. We'll get into that a little bit later, but if you need any replacement copies of this, you can get 100 of them for an extra $20.
Oh, that's not bad at all then. So, like, in school, like, this past year, I learned a lot about, like, the PEO and the MOHO. Like, is any of those theories kind of embedded in this assessment?
Great question, Brandon. So, it actually says right in the manual, again, it's got a big old section here about occupational therapy models. So it does draw right on the CMOP-E and the
Oh, okay.
PEO. And you said you've been learning about those, which is great.
Yeah.
So what this says is from the perspective of occupational therapy, occupational performance is described as the experience of a person engaging in an occupation within a specific environment. So both of the models, the CMOP-E and the PEO, make clear that performance is dependent on a relationship or transaction between the person and the environment while completing an occupation.
Oh. Wow, the stuff we learned in school has really come together in practice.
It sure is.
So, my question is, like, how do I administer the assessment?
Okay, so that's where this form comes in here, Brandon. So what we're going to do once we get to Ann and Dan's is we are going to go through this 84 point checklist, go through each step one by one, assessing their whole home, and every single area will get scored as either no problem, mild problem, moderate problem, or severe problem. From there, we'll be able to score the whole test and be able to give them some recommendations.
So, like, this seems like it's pretty lengthy. So, like, how long is this going to take, a full day, or?
It's about a 90-minute assessment.
Oh, that's not bad at all. It's going to be an interesting afternoon.
Hi, Ann and Dan, how are you today?
Good, thanks.
Thank you.
Good. So my name is Brandon. I'm the occupational therapist here. This is also Brandon, my student occupational therapist. Very easy to remember the names here, Brandon and Brandon. So we are here today because it sounds like you're looking to get some changes made to your home, having some difficulty with the wheelchair there, is that correct?
Yes. So I'm Anne. This is Dan, of course. We have acquired this lovely cabin, and I just turned 65, and I've been having a little bit of trouble with my osteoarthritis. So what I do around the home is usually use the wheelchair, just where it's easier on my joints. So yeah.
Okay, so what I think we'd like to take you through today in that case is something called a safer home assessment. So let's take a look at this here.
Sure.
Basically what that involves is us getting a little bit of information from you, just from your perspective, then watching you kind of maneuver around the house in your chair to get a hands-on idea of what's happening, and then also just taking a walk through the space to get a better understanding of maybe some challenge areas as well. Of course, if that's something you're comfortable with and that you consent to.
Certainly, of course.
Okay, so why don't we start off with you just telling us maybe a little bit about the specific challenges that you're having with the chair in the cabin here.
Sure. As you can see, it's seated quite low. I like to be in the kitchen, so the kitchen in this place is a little bit old, so we have it's a little bit high up for me to reach on top of the countertops or maybe to cut vegetables on the island. I'm just not at a great position. I also find it kind of difficult maneuvering around the kitchen just based on its shape, so having kind of an open, accessible kitchen would be fantastic.
And she also has trouble transferring to and from the bathtub. I've been assisting Anne recently because not too long ago she had a little slip, which scared us both, and we just like to make sure that that's not going to happen again.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to bathe without worrying about him being around. Sometimes he likes to be out in the yard or in the garage or something, and I'd like to just hop in the tub, but it's kind of scary sometimes. So having some kind of an accessible bathroom, bathtub, shower would be fantastic.
Okay.
So, and then I have the nice checklist here for the assessment. It takes approximately 90 minutes. That's including the part for me, Brand, to watch maneuver around the cabin, see how you go from the bathtub, how you do things in the kitchen.
Sure.
And then after that, also our own assessment of just kind of going through the house together and just seeing what we find.
Yeah, sounds good.
Sounds great.
Okay, so what we'd like to start with in that case, Anne, is actually getting you seated in that wheelchair, get a bit of a hands-on idea of what the challenges are looking like in that chair, and then we'll go from there.
Sure,
Ready to get started?
sounds good.
Let's go.
Perfect. So, Anne, we just want to take you through your daily routine. So, if you could, show us what you do in the morning and, perform whatever activities you do as well. Explain.
Okay. So I usually just start my mornings with tea and just like an apple or something.
Okay, so go about that, just pretend we aren't even here.
Okay, sure. So sometimes when I'm getting my tea, it gets tricky because obviously this is a little high for me to reach, and if it's really heavy with a lot of hot water, it can be a little tricky, a little dangerous sometimes. And then when I have my tea in my hand, oftentimes I either have to put it down or I'm rolling around just with one hand.
There's a big reach for that apple too.
It is.
Yeah.
And then, what I've found easier, because I can't roll up and put my feet under the island, is a lot of times I just roll up to the side and cut things from the side. So I'm reaching with one hand, which is often also dangerous.
So you're having a hard time when you're having to turn your body then to be doing that kind
Yeah.
of. Okay.
And sometimes reaching like this can be uncomfortable. So,
Yeah.
yeah, just things I have trouble with. So yeah, that's mostly what I do in the mornings just to get started.
Do you normally wash your dishes afterwards?
I do, yeah.
Do you mind showing us that as well?
Sure. Yeah. Let's see, I'll leave that there for now. The sink isn't bad, because it does let me get under, but I'm still reaching over the sink quite a bit to get things washed. And often this leads to me either spilling things or not getting big things cleaned. Sorts of things just like that.
So, Anne, I know you mentioned some difficulties getting in and out of the tub. I was wondering if you could show us as well how you get in and out of the tub with Dan's help.
Okay, sure. Dan! Dan! Can you help
What?
me? Can you help me?
Oh, yeah.
We'd just like to see how you help.
Yeah.
In and out.
So Anne always locks her wheels in place and then moves the arm so it's easier for her to transition. And then I managed to lift her in somehow. There we go. So getting in is the easy part. When it comes to getting her out, it's a little more challenging.
Would you mind demonstrating that to us?
Okay.
Dan, do you have any issues with your back at all?
Yeah, it's not great. Sometimes it hurts quite a bit.
Looks like a lot of work to get out of the tub.
It takes a lot of strength, yeah.
How do you find that, Anne?
It's tricky. It's more nerve-wracking for me than anything, but I definitely don't want to hurt him, and I don't want to get hurt getting in and out, so it's a challenge, for sure.
So, Brandon, why are we moving the chair again?
So, Brandon, we're measuring the chair so we can get an idea of how much space we actually need in the home to be able to make the chair fit. So it's 28 inches across,
Okay.
33 and a half inches high. Here. And 15 inches for the seats.
Perfect, that's great.
So, Brandon, now that we've taken some measurements of the wheelchair, we are going to assess the environment. So we're going to take some measurements here just to get an idea of what we're working with, what kind of space Anne does have currently, and what she will need to be more successful in her chair.
Absolutely, that makes sense.
So if you don't mind taking down some measurements for me, I'm just going to measure the distance here entering the kitchen. So we've got about 34 inches of clearance here.
Yep, that's a nice. I'm actually surprised when I was in the picture. I would have forgot that.
Old tricks of the trade, you know? And next up, counter height is 3 feet.
Perfect.
So we did see that Anne was having a bit of a difficult time reaching up to the counters in her
Absolutely.
chair. So definitely can add that into our intervention.
That'd be great, man. So me and Brandon just finished our assessment. I just finished the checklist there then. So based on the findings from the assessment, we will need to make quite a few modifications to the cabin, including a grab bar in the tub, making a water pathway for your chair to get through in the kitchen, as well as lowering from the counters. So that's some of the modifications we'll have to make. And Brandon's going to explain a little bit further on this.
So all of the recommendations that we've made, we will highlight in a report for you once we get back to the office. But everything that we will recommend is related to the challenges that you highlighted for us and the goals that you had set during that initial interview we had had.
Fantastic. No, those changes sound great. It sounds like they'll be really great for giving me freedom to do things I want to do, so that's fantastic.
Sounds a little expensive though. Well, it's a good thing we got some money saved up, eh, honey?
Yes.
I thought the assessment was really great. And what are the advantages and limitations of this tool, Brandon?
Well, this is a valid tool. Its validity has been proven by a panel of experts and seniors that assessed each item. They did confirm that each item was at an interplay of person and environment. However, unfortunately, the SAFER score relates to a client's cognitive status and independent living in a house. The scores don't actually directly relate to ADLs or IADLs. In terms of reliability, I did do my research, and for the reliability, it's been rated as having good internal consistency and has a good overall retest reliability. Despite being a valid and reliable tool, this assessment is, as you know, quite lengthy and very involved for both the OT student, and the client and caregivers, not to mention the pointedness at upper middle class individuals due to the expenses associated with home remodeling.
Yeah, it's a good thing Anne and Dan have money in the bank. But when I am my placement, I need to be able to talk about the OT models, Brandon. So what do you think? How do you think these models interpret the results?
Well, These people were in their own microenvironment. You were addressing their OPIs identified by them in their own home, and of course the personal factors at play, like Anne's osteoarthritis. There are also areas of the CMOP-E guiding the recommendations that we made today. We looked at Anne's occupations in self-care, like her bathing, her productivity, like meal preparation, and leisure. She said she likes to spend a lot of time in the kitchen doing cooking. So when we look at the results from the SAFER assessment, we found several occupations that Anne was unsafe completing alone. And these theories guide what we look for, how we enable these clients to continue to perform occupations safely, and ultimately achieve their own self-identified goals. So overall, this is a dynamic tool. Its in-depth assessment helps us assess a home using 3 different avenues like we did today: the interview portion, an activity assessment directly with Anne, and an environmental assessment. It allows the OT to assess the accessibility and safety of a home on a 4-point weighted scale to identify problem areas. So in your future work as an OT, Brandon, if you decide to enter fields of home assessment, geriatrics, brain or spinal cord injury, dementia, you could use this tool to make sure that all your assessments are adding all potential risk areas.
This is a really great tool.
It seems pretty awesome to me too, that's for sure.
Let's pump up some tunes and get back to the office.
All right, back to the office. Crank those tunes. Brandon, now that we're back in the office after we've done this assessment with Anne and Dan, here's our filled out score sheet. Just to give you an idea of how the scoring actually works for this. What we were doing today is we were going through each of the areas on our assessment and identifying the level of problem. So no identified problem, of course, would mean that there's no difficulties. Anne's doing just fine in that area. A mild problem means that there's just a mild safety concern, but it's never been a problem. Moderate would refer to a safety problem that needs to be addressed but is not likely a cause of immediate danger, and severe problem is referring to immediate danger, something that needs to be assessed for Anne to be able to do these things. So what we've done is gone through every single area and identified each area, making notes along the way. At the end of each section, we're taking our total for each column so we can add them up in the score sheet at the end, which I'll show you. So we've done living situation, mobility, environmental hazards, the kitchen, the household, eating, personal care, bathroom and toilet, medication, addiction and abuse, communication and scheduling, and wandering. After we've filled out all of that like we did in our assessment, we then take all of those numbers and transfer them down into the summary table. What we do here is add up each of the scores from all of the different problem areas and then multiply them by a weighted factor. What the weight factor does is it allows us to be able to get a score that indicates the severity as opposed to something that's less immediate, giving you a lower score. So for Anne and Dan today, when we assessed their home, we gave them a SAFER home score of 83 out of a potential 222. So what that means from here is that all of these areas can be addressed in our treatment planning. So Brandon, why don't you walk me through the scoring of your first SAFER home assessment?
Sure. So the score of the assessment indicates that there's a moderate number of safety problems in the home with a total score of 84 over 222.
So with the rating scale, a moderate issue means a safety problem that needs to be addressed but is not an immediate danger to the client. When assessing specific categories, the rating scale lends us an idea of how to prioritize aspects of our interventions. For example, moderate problems may not need to be addressed immediately, but severe ratings require urgent attention for the OT to create an intervention around. The findings may also influence the treatment plan because of how the assessment is structured. It's multidimensional, as the OT listens to what the client needs are in an interview. They observe the environment directly and inspect it with the tool. And lastly, the OT gets to observe the client through occupational analysis, doing the activity they want to do in the exact space they'll be doing it.
That's a very straightforward assessment. It's really clear for the assessor. So Brandon, what would you say the important aspects of the assessment to work on for Anne and Dan?
Well, there were some areas of the home that scored really well in our assessment, but there were some areas we did bring up as a concern. For example, wheelchair transfers in the home, storage and accessible spaces in the kitchen, cleaning has been an issue for Anne, meal preparation, the bathroom and the shower were an issue with transfers in and out of the tub, so maybe some grab bars being applied there, and just the accessibility of entrances, especially we mentioned the entrance into the bathroom.
Yeah, so I mean, like you talked about the bathrooms, we could install a walk-in stall tub and, like you said, grab bar, as well as adjusting the width of the bathroom doorway so that Anne can get through with the wheelchair no issue. For the kitchen, we could definitely change the height of the countertops and as well as the counters and the cupboards to lower them and make it easier for her to access. Additionally, we could also change the walkways if needed, maybe the light switches as well. And all these changes can really help Anne and Dan with adjusting to the new home.
Excellent.
So Brandon, what does these findings mean for their occupations? Where do we go from here?
Well, after implementing all of the changes that we've come across based on our Safer Home evaluation, Anne will be able to meet her occupational goals and safely complete all of her desired tasks.
Okay. And how will these results create a treatment plan, or I guess intervention plan for them?
Well, our treatment plan will help adapt her environment
Mhm.
so she can achieve those goals, right?
Yeah.
We've already done the assessment, so we know exactly where the issues lie in the house.
Yeah.
Once we build our treatment plan with all of the suggested updates to the home, they will then be able to hire a contractor, adjust the home so it sets up for all of Anne's needs for the future.
And this has been a great last day of placement for me.
I really hope you learned a lot, Brandon. You
Thanks.
made some homes safer, you made some dreams come true.